Hello, my name is Alessandro, and I am a master student at Montpellier Business School, and I have decided to present a document named Tourism Small and Medium Enterprises Business Model under COVID-19, a study on Langhe, and Monferrato, and I called my presentation a focus at Langhe, and Monferrato business adjustments that they have made. So, first of all, I make an overall view about tourism in Italy, and Italy every year is expected to be visited by 60 million tourists, and we're not even considering the Italians, we're just considering the foreigners. And the nation is one of the top destinations in the world, and it is now the ninth most attractive country for tourism. It was even higher 10 years ago. And tourism provide beneficial effect on the country as a whole. In fact, when tourists spend their money, the money just doesn't go just on the enterprises that are directly related to tourism, but also to other enterprises that are indirectly related to tourism. And tourism overall generates 13% of Italian GDP. And COVID-19 was an unexpected drama, obviously not just for Italy but for the whole world, especially in the tourism sector. The tourism was the fourth industry in the world in 2019. COVID-19 had a brutal impact on the industry, and because country closed down the borders, so hotels and restaurants were forced to shut down. Well, it wasn't just for the restriction among the countries, but also inside a country there were obviously restrictions. And so, especially in Italy, but overall in Europe, I know about Italy, the restrictions very often imposed restaurants and hotels to shut down. But anyway, the customers were definitely not that many compared to previous years. And keep in mind that restaurants and hotels need a certain number of people to remain open, otherwise it's not profitable. And so also, because restaurants and hotels had to shut down, also perishable products that rely on the tourism industry, perishable products like food, for example, they cannot be maintained forever, for a long time. So it was a waste. So the document provided obviously remarked that small and medium enterprises must take action and receive help. On one hand, small and medium enterprises need to adapt to the current situation. And even if the time is dramatic for tourism, there is always a chance to change, and we will see that in the next slides. Even during a pandemic, even during a difficult time, you can implement some business model changes to obtain some profit. And on the other hand, small and medium enterprises need help from the government. and because they need to survive, and whatever they do, they're going to have some important losses. And so especially I'm thinking about small family business, maybe they do not have much saved. In that it doesn't take much to be in debt, so they need help from the government, and the help must be relevant. I think it's calculated on the previous year profit without COVID. So the questions now are: first, what kind of countermeasures can small and medium enterprises take in order to reduce the harshness of COVID-19, and can any of those measures be kept in the future in a post-pandemic time? So those are important questions. Remember, it's not easy to answer because COVID-19 is an unprecedented event in recent history. I think something similar happened about 100 years ago in a completely different time. Recently, mainly Mexico has seen a decrease in tourism in 2009 for influenza, but it was limited in time, and also some territories have seen a decrease recently for malaria, but just 10% decrease in tourism. So the numbers are not close to the ones that we're seeing today with COVID-19. So first, one remedy that it could be taken is thanks to the technological advancements. So virtual reality and is a new proposition, and it can engage the tourists even if they're home. It's virtual, and virtual tours to popular attractions were organized, for example, by the Singapore Tourist Board and by Japanese tourism workers. And I think an important example, a crucial example, was in Piedmont. And the famous Egyptian museum in Piedmont, the second most important in the world for what concerns Egypt, ancient Egypt, allows virtual tourism, despite it being close to physical public. So here is an image from a virtual tour, and it's a museum that is widely known, internationally known. In fact, it would receive 800,000 visitors per year before COVID, without COVID. And is one of the most ancient museums in the world, and the second most valuable if you consider the quality of historical pieces. So now we are focusing on Langhe, Ruero, and Monferrato, like the document did, and I consider those territories to have a peculiar business model, and those territories were classified in 2014 as UNESCO heritage sites. So that means they have outstanding universal value to humanity, and those territories have unique characteristics in Italy, and I have a list of the main characteristics. Well, they are wine and food excellence, and they have distinct heritage and culture. So remember, each of these territory had different dynasty. They have plenty of natural resources, experiential tourism, which is highly customizable, and then there are worldwide known in-person events, the Alba White Truffle Fair and Vinum, which is a wine fair. And there is a high percentage of family business or also medium-sized enterprises in tourism, and they all form an organic business model because everyone that is in the business industry is focused on the excellence of the territory. So they give a unique and precious experience to the tourists. Here's a picture of Binum, for example, and it gets very crowded. This is in Alba, which is a small city in Langhe. It gets very crowded, and you can see it says dolcetto in this area of the fair. They serve dolcetto wine, so they to different areas they give different wines, different tastes. So for example, a visitor that drinks knows the name, remember the name, and then might have probably a favorite wine, and he gets more attached to the situation. He can say, oh, I prefer this or I prefer that one. And in this hall, in these halls that you see, they mainly serve dolcetto. And there's a picture of the Langhe territory. You can see it's a small village surrounded by vineyards, and many of the bed and breakfasts that host the tourists are actually in these small villages, so they provide a unique experience to tourists. And there's a picture that I've taken from the document because I think it's a very telling picture about the area. There are tourism associations which are also very important to show and to highlight the excellence and the premium experience that tourists may receive. Then there are multiple types of attractions for tourists, both inside and inside, organic business models like we've seen. And then there are multiple segments of tourists. There aren't just couples, or there aren't just families, but all kinds of segments of tourists visit the area. So the adjustments made during COVID-19, well, I have to say first that some pre-existing factors did not change. Instead, they became more important, like authenticity, that is related to the culture and the heritage of the place. Then tourism associations, they became more important. They might give advice to the small and medium enterprises. Then there is a personalized marketing strategy, and it is connected to digitalization. Maybe they can provide for every foreigner a story in their language. And then there are some factors that became incredibly more relevant, like safety standards and digitalizations, and factors that became less relevant, like in-person events. So when we talk about digitalization, we talk about something fundamental to increase the engagement from potential customers. And when they're home, if they're forced to stay home, you must use digitalization. And there are many ways of doing so: video clips, photographs, online marketing, or social media storytelling. Even if they're home, they may be interested in your offer, in your promotion, and it's possible also to make a virtual experience, like we've already said, or to sell products online. In fact, the online truffle fair was entirely online in 2020, and there was a boom in online demand for truffle. And the packages started at 250 euros for various truffles to taste. And there was an expert that would indicate the different tastes, that will describe the different truffles, so it made it interactive for the customers to buy the truffles. Then experiential tourism. Yes, tourism is experiential in the area. The tourists usually want to interact with local community because they're interested. They perceive a sense of culture, and but there are restrictions for any internal space, so outdoor activities should be encouraged. And but that's no problem. Like we've said, there is an incredible nature in this area, and untouched nature in some cases, and it's definitely not an area that is heavily built. And also wine testing, for example, can be done outside, and visit to the cellars have a maximum number of tourists for safety reasons. And other than that, psychologically, tourists might have concern to always social distance, even if it's a large area. The wine cellars are usually large. There is always a concern. So, safety, to promote safety, is very important. And they've done a good job in the area. They also managed public places not to be overcrowded. For example, city centers were accessible only by a certain number of people. And when that happens, it shows to tourists or to potential tourists that there is a sensibility on that. So tourists feel more safe. And when that is promoted also online, there might be more possibility that someone will visit physically the place, even considering that there are some restrictions. It depends on the time. Sometimes there's strong restrictions, sometimes they're not. It depends. And also tourism association try to highlight that. So when we talk about sustainability, we refer to the fact that the materials and resources are mostly made on the territories. For what concern food and wine, definitely. And there is a tradition on food and wine. And there is a concept of slow tourism. So sustainable tourism guarantees longevity, but the focus is on the experience, like we said, the experiential tourism, and it's very difficult to become a renowned touristic destination. In conclusion, where the restrictions were obviously a very negative factor, there's been lots of losses for small and medium enterprises, and we've seen that some elements became more relevant than others. And especially the element of safety was completely new regarding social distancing and protection from the virus. But one thing to keep in mind for this presentation is that the core value proposition remained the same if we think about the brand image that the territory have regarding the culture, the heritage, the experience in visiting those places, the authenticity that is perceived. And definitely during this dangerous time, there is an encouragement of outdoor tourism. Regarding the future, well, the big change in digitalization can be kept in the future. It strengthened the core value. And also, I was wondering, why not making the truffle fair both live and online? I will definitely give priority to live visitors, in-person visitors, but also it can still be done online, something similar to the 2020 truffle fair. So even tourists that cannot visit, not because of the pandemic, but because of other problems that they might have, they can still participate, they still feel engaged. And obviously, the end of safety measures will be a great thing for the territory because psychologically, a tourist feel more free in general to visit places, and that's for the whole world. And other parts of Italy also, the document indicated that also other parts of Italy can emulate this territory and their business models. But it's important to keep in mind that it's not easy. It presents, like we've seen, particular characteristics that are not easy to find in other places. And this was my conclusion. Those are the references. And the main reference was obviously the document provided by Professor Dana of Montpellier Business School.